In this video, I'm going to demonstrate the typography classes in Bootstrap. There will also be another couple of videos that will discuss other classes more related specifically to formatting and spacing text. But let's start off by talking about the approach. What I want to do is add another web page to our project. I'm going to call this Typography Classes. And then I'm going to go to the HTML5 elements bootstrap.html that I introduced in the previous lesson that I created off camera. And I'm going to paste that in here. And what I want to do is just go through this document. And on camera, we're going to, for example, introduce a given idea or concept, and we'll even create a reproduction of what is in the documentation, but specific in this document to kind of compare the before and the after. And then off camera, I'll go back and I'll delete everything that really doesn't apply to this particular lesson. So it'll be the majority of things that'll be removed. So hopefully it'll make sense once we get started here and working on it. So one of the first things that I need to point out is that Bootstrap does style up those headings that we saw, but they also provide a series of classes so that you can use the headings inline. So for example, if I wanted to create some lorem ipsum text, let me just grab this. And instead of, for example, using a H1, which is as a block, will push make three separate lines of lorem, ipsum dolor, and then everything that comes after it. Instead, I may want to just do an inline situation like this, where I go span class equals, and then like H3, for example. All right. And now let's just call this the headings classes. All right. In fact, we'll just copy this and we'll do it 6 times so you can kind of see what they look like. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Fighting IntelliSense right now. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at that. All right, you may never need this kind of effect. However, it is interesting that you can do that. So, all right, that's the first set of typography classes I wanted to talk about. There's also a way to create customized headings. So let's call this H2 customized headings, like so. And you can do something like they show, and I'll just grab another lorem ipsum line here from this and do like let's go H4, and then inside of this, what I can do is then choose, for example, everything else to use small, and then class equals text muted. And what this will do is provide us kind of a subheading, a muted subheading right next to the H4. So here in this case, you can see here's the bolder lorem ipsum, and then off to the side, a smaller, slightly lighter colored version for a customized version of the heading. Kind of cool. As I talked about before, there are display headings. We've already looked at these once, but they kind of belong here in this context. So we already looked at, for example, you can do H1 and then set H1 display 1. So set class equals display 1, and you can do this all the way through 4. So let's go 2, 3, and 4, and change it here as well. And then also, just to kind of show this at the same time, we can do the same thing with anything. Honestly, we don't need to use a heading in order to use the display class. So we could do paragraph display 1 through 4. So let's go 2, 3, and 4. And let's go ahead and look at those. All right, so here we go. H1, display 1 through 4, and then here's the paragraph, display 1 through 4. Notice that the paragraph, because it has some built-in padding for paragraph spacing, you'll get a lot more spacing. So just be aware that you may never need to do that or use it for that purpose, but you can apply these display headings pretty much to any display tag. Okay, and so you may want to also do what they call a lead, and so you might have something like H2, this is the title, and then below that you might want to do something like paragraph, the class equals lead, and this is where you would add, let's grab some lorem ipsum again. You need to just have this like laying out by itself without any formatting in it. In fact, I'll do that. All right, so that might be your lead story, and then you go off into your actual paragraph itself, like so. So let's take a look at the lead. All right, so you can see you get essentially three different styles. This would be the actual header, then some sort of a one-liner subheading that captures interest, and then you go on with your the rest of your document. Okay. Let's find the abbreviation tag. Okay, here we go. And you can see here that I've created this abbreviation tag, and you can apply a class to this to give it a slightly different effect called initialism, like so. And so now let's just do HR so we can find this easy. Like so. Now let's go ahead and run it and find the two abbreviations. All right, so now you can see that the initialism makes it just slightly smaller, and that's pretty much the only difference between it. It just makes it a slightly smaller and inlines it a little bit more nicely inside of your paragraph. All right. All right. Furthermore, I think we talk about block quotes here. Yep, there's a block quote, and they give you a couple of options for block quotes. Not the least of which are a block quote class. So here again, I'm just going to wrap some HRs around this so we can find it easily. And then we're going to do a couple of these. So let's grab this first one, and we'll just get rid of that. And here I can set the class equal to block quote as well. And that should make it interesting. And then there's another version of this where we'll create yet another block quote. But this time, what we'll do inside of the block quote is a little bit different. We can add a footer and set the class equal to block quote footer. And then you can give the attribution, like so. And then there's one other version of this. So let's copy that one and put it here. And this time we're going to use block quote space block quote reverse. And what this will do is just right align everything, making it a little more visually interesting. All right, so let's see these block quotes in action here. Let's go find block quote. Okay, so here's the original block quote. Here's the block quote with the block quote class applied to it. You see you get this little gray area along the left border. Now, ideally, we'd use a little margin to push that out so you could see it a little bit better. And in their example, they do that, but we haven't talked about the margin classes just yet, so I didn't want to introduce that too soon. Here we have the block quote with the footer with its class set to block quote footer. And then finally, this last block quote that has the class set to block quote and also set to block quote dash reverse, and it just right aligns everything. And notice we still get that little gray line to the right to style it nicely. Very cool. All right, so let's move on to lists. There are obviously unordered and ordered lists in HTML5 and definition lists as well. And what you can do, take a list like this and then set the class equals list unstyled to remove margin and also any of the little the dots, the bullet points next to it. And one more, so we'll grab this one more time and we'll create another one that will be list inline, which will give us a horizontally aligned list. So we would need to then go list inline item on each of the individual list items then as well. We'll see how that looks here in just a moment. So let's go ahead and run this and we'll search for unordered list on our page. Control F, unordered list. All right, so here we go. The first one, we didn't touch it. The second one, we applied the list unstyled. And then the third one, we applied the list inline and then list inline item for each of the individual items. All right, so this might be useful for like a menu or something along those lines. Here we have a definition list where you have a term and then the different definitions for that term. Not used very often, but they do have one helpful little class that you can apply to it to make it a little bit more interesting. And so what we'll do is go class equals dl.horizontal. And then they show that you can, inside of here, use a the familiar column, the column styles. So I could do, for example, column 3 here, class equals col XS 9, for example. And I might want this one to go to the next line, so I'll do a col XS 9, but then I'll also add an offset of 3 to it. So col XS offset 3. And then one other thing we can do, if the definition term is too long, we can add this text truncate, which should truncate the item if it's just too long to fit in the available area. So let's see how this actually works now. So we're going to search for definition list. Definition list. There we go. Okay. So you can see that this isn't exactly what I had in mind here. But if we, and I think we've got some margin issues, obviously, because things are popping off to the left-hand side. But notice if I make the window really small, obviously we want to truncate the term so we can fit in the description, the definition itself as well. Okay, so that's the idea. Looks like they may have a little work left to do on that, at least from if you're not going to keep that inside of a container. So that's probably where the problem's at. I don't have a container set up for this. That's all the typography classes that I wanted to talk about in this lesson. We'll continue on looking at some specific text utility classes that you can apply to your paragraphs and other text as well in the next lesson. We'll see you there. Thanks.